As sea levels rose, the continents were gradually submerged. The earth turned into an endless sphere of water from which the prosperous human civilization also gradually withered away along with humanity, almost perishing at that time, the material basis of the economy. Human civilization completely collapsed and looked like an ancient relic that had sunk deep into the surrounding ocean. All kinds of underwater creatures, from big to small, wriggled through the buildings, street lights, and old cars. Suddenly, there was a boom. Rang out. It turned out to be Boda and his father, under old protective gear, holding guns, looking for something around. As I walked around here, my father reminded me that there were too many broken pieces of glass. Be careful, I know, and my father replied with, I could see the bored expressions on their faces as the two of them stopped in front of a small dilapidated store to look inside. When they felt safe enough, they went inside and used a flashlight to look around. Suddenly, something caught their attention. Bata, he happily shouted loudly, Dad, look at all this canned food. Dad bought. I pushed the cart inside and there are a few other items. Let's take everything we can use, and he picked it up. Boda picked up a box and wondered what this was. It could be powdered milk, his father replied. Then he turned around and blamed Boda. You don't want to learn to read, do you? What's the use, Dad? He stubbornly asked again. No one uses it here. I'm very serious. Even if you don't see the benefits of it now, there will be a time in the future when you will need it. I need to learn to read more. Boda pouted and looked annoyed. My father kept nagging me. Suddenly, he saw his father take a few more plates and put them in the basket and immediately lamented. Father, we already have too many plates. I don't think there is any need to take more. His father smiled slightly as he said, there will come a time when we will need to use them. After saying that, he called Bada closer. Both of them hugged tightly the cart that they just took from there. That's probably enough. Bada held it firmly for Dad. I just saw Father Bada pull the rope around and suddenly make a booming sound, enveloping the cart as air bubbles pulled both father and son up. Boda turned his face down and said nothing, looking into nothingness. He still remembered his father calling this place ruins. Clearly this used to be a crowded city, but now this place is gloomy and scary. After a while, Boda and his son finally reached the surface of the water. They gradually moved towards a boat that looked somewhat shabby. In front of us, from the top of the boat, there was a little girl who was my little sister, Lita. My father looked up and asked, Lita, did you see anything interesting? No, father, the girl just replied with a bored look. Nothing. Father Bada took off his helmet and sat down. He guessed there wouldn't be any birds. We haven't seen any birds since we stopped recently for more than a month. Boda next to him lamented, Father, do you think there is someone else living out there besides us? Lita's eyes also sparkled with confusion. Dad, does everyone live in heaven with Mom? Hearing these questions, the father of the two children did not always answer. Father gently called their names, then patted Boda and Lita on the shoulders. I'm sure people are living somewhere around us. We just haven't met them yet because the ocean is so vast. And no matter what happens, Dad will protect you two with his life, but you two must help each other. After hearing this, the two children's emotions were somewhat calmed and they smiled happily as if expressing their agreement with their father. Originally, the father of these two children also had his own thoughts. Everyone on the boat worked together. They arranged work for each person. Father was responsible for hunting and maintaining the boat. Boda dried the fish and looked for water while Lita did the washing and cleaning. Exploring ruins has always been the job of Father and Bada. Since the beginning of this year, Father has made him a pair of diving goggles. Recently, he took him to explore the ruins, and this is how the three of them survive in this fierce world. The cart was lifted up and filled with a lot of old things. Checking the objects found under the ruins was one of Boda and Lita's pastimes. But there is a more special moment that they must always remember, when the sunlight gradually disappears behind the clouds. When the clocks hanging on poles on the boat rang, Father Boda opened the hatch and urged everyone to go inside. They looked extremely rushed. Night was the time when they all had to be careful. Bada, before going inside, still felt nostalgic for something. He looked at the fish area in front of the dried fish hanging on a trellis. Boda had forgotten to bring the fish. Boda tried to get out, but his father stopped him and left Boda. Dad pushed him down into the basement and urged him inside. Once finished, the children's father pulled the cellar door down and the last sunlight sank into the clouds. Under the starry night sky, the space in the boat was so quiet that only the ticking of the clock could be heard. Sitting in the basement, father and son Bada were hugging each other tightly. Lita looked at the goldfish tank next to her, innocently asking, "Dad, do you need to hug the fishbowl tightly?" Before the little girl could finish her sentence, her father signaled her to keep quiet, making her tremble in fear. Suddenly, a violent shaking came. Each wave shook their family's old boat back and forth. Bada's father tensed and hugged his two children. Under that fierce movement, it came. Bada's expression was extremely panicked. From under the water out there, it seemed like something was coming. It was moving closer and closer to their family's boat. "Those are nocturnal monsters." They flew around the boat as if they were about to devour it. After approaching the boat, they repeatedly attacked the boat's hull. The boat became terribly shaken. It shook so much that Boda had to cover his mouth to keep from screaming. He closed his eyes tightly and silently begged, "I'm so scared, monster. Please go away." Suddenly, his father grabbed his shoulder. He was startled and turned around. Immediately seeing his father's gentle face, everything would be okay, the children's father reassured him. They just poked the boat a few times to satisfy their curiosity and would leave, looking up at the ceiling and hearing each cracking sound. Interspersed with the sound of a ticking clock and violent emotions, the three of them could only hug each other. Bada's father would hold the two children until the monsters were gone. In his father's arms, he seemed to feel more secure. Time passed, the tremors ended, the two children fell asleep on the floor in a daze. Boda wondered to his father, "Are there a lot of sea monsters in the place where Dad used to live?" "Yes," he nodded, "because they live everywhere under the water. But we have javelin throwers." This sentence of his father attracted the attention of the father. He turned around and wondered, "What are javelin throwers?" Dad recounts that javelin throwers are warriors who fight sea monsters to protect their village. He is also one of them. The tattoo on Mr. Chin's shoulder is the symbol of a javelin thrower. I looked at the tattoo curiously. What was that? There were 6 strange dots under it. Dad explained to me that these weren't dots, they were stars. "What are stars?" Boda acted like a child who had never heard of them. Dad forgot. His eyes softened.